In 1941, in the city of Baghdad, a pogrom erupted that most people in the Western world have never heard of. It was called the Farhud. Over a period of 2 days, mobs swept through the Jewish quarter of one of the oldest cities on earth. They murdered between 150 and 180 Jews. They injured over 2,000. They looted more than 1,500 Jewish-owned shops. They set homes on fire. They dragged families into the streets. And when it was over, the Jewish community of Baghdad, a community that had existed continuously in Iraq for over 2,600 years, longer than virtually any other Jewish community on earth, understood that the world they had known was ending, and almost nobody outside the Middle East knows it happened. Between 1948 and the early 1970s, more than 850,000 Jews were forced to leave their homes across the Arab world. They left Iraq, Yemen, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Syria, and Lebanon. They left behind property, businesses, synagogues, cemeteries, schools, and entire neighborhoods that their families had inhabited for millennia. In some countries, over 90% of the Jewish population vanished within a few years. Today, fewer than 15,000 Jews remain in the entire Arab world. A civilization that had thrived for over 2,500 years was dismantled in a single generation. This is the Jewish Nakba, and it is the history that the Arab world has tried to erase for over 70 years. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. To understand the scale of what was lost, you need to understand what existed before. Jewish communities in the Middle East and North Africa were not recent transplants. They were among the oldest Jewish populations in the world, in many cases far older than the Ashkenazi communities of Europe. Jews had lived in Iraq since the Babylonian exile in 586 BCE, over 2,600 years of continuous presence. The Babylonian Talmud, one of the most important texts in all of Judaism, was compiled in Iraq between the 3rd and 6th centuries. When Europeans were living in mud huts, Iraqi Jews were running academies of learning that shaped Jewish law for the entire world. In Yemen, Jewish communities dated back at least to the 2nd century CE, and some traditions claim a presence stretching back to the time of King Solomon. In Egypt, Jews had lived continuously since at least the 5th century BC, and the Jewish community of Alexandria was once one of the largest and most influential in the ancient world. In Morocco, Jewish presence predated the Arab conquest by centuries. The Moroccan Jewish community was the largest in the Arab world, numbering approximately 280,000 in 1948. In Libya, Jews had lived since the 3rd century BCE. In Tunisia, since the 2nd century BCE. In Syria, since biblical times. These were not marginal communities. They were central to the economic, intellectual, and cultural life of the countries they inhabited. Iraqi Jews dominated the banking and trading sectors. Egyptian Jews were prominent in finance, commerce, and the professions. Moroccan Jews were integrated into the royal court and the merchant class. Yemeni Jews were renowned silversmiths and craftsmen. These communities spoke Arabic alongside Hebrew and Aramaic. They ate the local food. They wore the local clothing. They were, by every measure, indigenous to the lands they inhabited. In many cases, they had been there longer than the Arab populations that now surrounded them. The Jews of Iraq predated the Arab conquest by over 1,000 years. The Jews of Morocco predated Islam by centuries. The Jews of Yemen had communities that were older than Christianity itself. And it was not all persecution. For significant periods of history, Jews in Arab lands lived in relative security and even prosperity. The medieval Islamic Golden Age saw Jewish scholars, physicians, poets, and philosophers flourish under Muslim rule. Maimonides, the greatest Jewish philosopher of the medieval period, wrote his most important works in Arabic while living in Egypt. The partnership between Jewish and Muslim intellectual traditions produced masterworks in medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy that influenced the entire world. This history of coexistence makes what happened after 1948 all the more devastating, because it destroyed not just communities but a relationship between two peoples that had, for significant periods, been genuinely productive and mutually beneficial. And then, in the span of roughly 2 decades, all of it was destroyed. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. The destruction was not spontaneous. It was systematic. The New York Times ran a headline on May 16, 1948, the day after Israel declared independence: Jews in grave danger in all Muslim lands, 900,000 in Africa and Asia face wrath of their foes. The headline was prophetic. In Iraq, the situation deteriorated rapidly after the Farhud and collapsed entirely after 1948. Jewish businesses were boycotted. Jewish professionals were fired from government positions. In August 1948, the Iraqi government arrested and publicly executed Shafiq Adids, a wealthy Jewish businessman and the chief agent for the Ford Motor Company in Iraq, on fabricated charges of supplying weapons to Israel. Adids was an assimilated Jew with close ties to the government who had never supported Zionism. His execution was a message to the entire Jewish community: nobody was safe. In 1950, Iraq passed a law allowing Jews to emigrate, but requiring them to forfeit their Iraqi citizenship. In 1951, their property was frozen and confiscated. Between 1950 and 1951, approximately 120,000 Iraqi Jews were airlifted to Israel in Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, leaving behind everything they owned. By 2003, fewer than 100 Jews remained in Iraq. In Yemen, anti-Jewish riots erupted in the city of Aden in December 1947, immediately following the UN partition vote. More than 80 Jews were murdered. Homes, schools, and synagogues were burned. Between 1949 and 1950, nearly the entire Yemeni Jewish community, approximately 49,000 people, was airlifted to Israel in Operation Magic Carpet. Most had never seen an airplane before. They left behind centuries of material culture, religious manuscripts, and communal property. In Egypt, the government began a campaign of economic strangulation in the late 1940s. A 1947 law required that 75% of employees in any company be real Egyptians, a category that excluded most Jews. Jewish property was confiscated. Jewish citizens were arrested and interned. After the Suez Crisis in 1956, the Egyptian government expelled approximately 25,000 Jews, giving them days to leave and confiscating virtually everything they owned. By 1970, only a few hundred Jews remained in a country that had once been home to 75,000. In Libya, anti-Jewish pogroms in Tripoli in November 1945 killed over 140 Jews, including 36 children, and destroyed 5 synagogues. After 1948, Jewish emigration was actively encouraged and then coerced. In 1961, a law stripped Jews of their citizenship. In 1967, remaining Jews were placed in camps. Today, no Jews live in Libya. The community is completely extinct. In Morocco, the largest Jewish community in the Arab world was dismantled more gradually, but no less completely. In 1948, approximately 280,000 Jews lived there. Anti-Jewish riots in Ouda and Jarada in June 1948 killed dozens of people. Over the following decades, a combination of political pressure, economic restrictions, and periodic violence drove the community into emigration. By 1970, only 35,000 remained. Today, approximately 2,000 Jews live in Morocco, a fraction of 1% of the pre-1948 population. The pattern repeated itself across every country. In Algeria, 130,000 Jews reduced to roughly zero. In Tunisia, 105,000 reduced to approximately 1,500. In Syria, 30,000 reduced to near zero, with the remaining Jews effectively held hostage until the 1990s, forbidden from leaving, forbidden from selling their property, forbidden from communicating with Jews abroad. In Lebanon, 5,000 reduced to under 100. And in Iran, though not an Arab country, the pattern was similar. The 1979 Islamic Revolution triggered the flight of approximately 70,000 Jews from a community that had existed since the time of Cyrus the Great, 2,500 years earlier. The chief rabbi of Iran was executed. Jewish property was confiscated. Today, roughly 9,000 Jews remain in Iran, the largest Jewish community in any Muslim-majority country, but a shadow of what existed before. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. The financial scale of the dispossession is staggering. Jewish refugees from Arab countries left behind an estimated $6 to $30 billion in property and assets, adjusted to today's values. In many cases, their property was confiscated by the state through explicit legislation. In Iraq, a 1951 law froze Jewish assets, and a subsequent decree allowed the government to seize them permanently. In Egypt, Jewish property was confiscated under a series of sequestration orders in the 1950s. In Libya, a 1970 decree confiscated all remaining Jewish property. Unlike the restitution processes that have been attempted, however imperfectly, for European Holocaust survivors, there has been no comparable process for Jewish refugees from Arab countries. No Arab government has offered restitution, compensation, or even formal acknowledgement of what was taken. And that brings us to the erasure itself. The physical evidence of 2,600 years of Jewish life across the Arab world has been systematically destroyed, neglected, or repurposed. Ancient synagogues have been demolished or converted into mosques and commercial buildings. Jewish cemeteries have been built over. Jewish quarters that once hummed with life stand empty or have been absorbed into the surrounding urban fabric with no markers, no memorials, no acknowledgement of who lived there. In many countries, the very existence of a Jewish past has been scrubbed from official histories, educational curricula, and public discourse. This is not the natural fading of historical memory over centuries. This happened within living memory. There are people alive today who were born in Baghdad, Cairo, Tripoli, and Sana'a, who remember their homes, their neighbors, their synagogues, who can describe the streets they walked as children, and who have never received a single word of acknowledgement from the governments that expelled them. The story of Jewish refugees from Arab countries is one of the great untold chapters of the 20th century. It involved nearly 1 million people. It destroyed communities that had existed for millennia. It transferred billions of dollars in wealth from Jewish families to Arab states. And it happened at almost exactly the same time as the displacement of Palestinians, creating a parallel refugee crisis that has been treated with radically different levels of international attention and sympathy. That double standard is itself part of the erasure. The Palestinian refugee crisis has been the subject of over 100 United Nations resolutions. A dedicated UN agency, UNRWA, was created exclusively to serve Palestinian refugees and has operated continuously since 1949. No comparable body has ever been created for Jewish refugees from Arab lands. No UN resolution has ever addressed their displacement. The world created an entire institutional infrastructure to memorialize one refugee crisis and virtually ignored the other. The Jewish communities that were expelled did not disappear. They rebuilt. In Israel, they became the majority of the population. Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews now constitute over 50% of Israeli Jews. They brought with them their languages, their music, their food, their religious traditions, and their memories. In France, they built thriving communities, particularly in Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. In the United States, Canada, and Latin America, they started over again, just as Jews have been starting over for 2,000 years. But rebuilding is not the same as forgetting. And for 70 years, the world has asked these communities to do both. To rebuild their lives and to forget what was taken from them. To integrate into their new countries and to stay silent about the old ones. To accept that their story does not matter as much as other stories. That their dispossession does not count as much as other dispossessions. That their history is a footnote rather than a chapter. This video exists because it is not a footnote, it is a chapter. 850,000 people were driven from their homes. Communities that predated Islam by 1,000 years were destroyed. Billions of dollars in property were confiscated without compensation. And the countries that did this have never acknowledged what they did. That is not history fading. That is history being erased. And the only defense against erasure is telling the story out loud to anyone who will listen. Now you have heard it. And you cannot unhear it. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. Thank you for watching. If you want to go deeper, the next video on your screen is one you won't want to miss. I'll see you there.